is a Tab Media special report focused on the mental health community. And we're talking about individuals who are wrestling with mental illness as well as those who love and care for them. Joining me are co-authors and good friends, Karen Allen and Sharon Atwood. Thank you both for being here.
Oh, our pleasure.
We're glad to be here.
All right. So Karen and Sharon, I love it rhymes. Karen and Sharon wrote a book, and it's called Outta My Mind, Into His Heart, 60 Devotions for Those with Mental Illness and Their Advocates. They've released this book, and they've been able to share about it. They're speaking about it. They have lots of opportunities, and I know that it is only going to increase with the people wanting to hear more about your stories and why you wrote this book and what kind of results you're getting. So I'm excited that you're willing to spend some time with us to share a little bit about that. So let's just dive in. First of all, the neat part of this story is because we are talking about the individual as well as the person who cares, the advocate as you're calling the person. You guys fit into those roles. And that is, I think, just such a courageous thing to do. So tell us a little bit about y'all's stories and then how you pulled all of this together into a book form so we can kind of understand where we're coming from.
Well,
and this is Sharon talking right now. Right.
Well, I am diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and Karen Allen is my advocate. And as far as our story goes, we've just been through a lot of different ordeals. That's a good way to put it.
Ordeals, I like that.
With manic episodes and also depressive episodes and that kind of thing in the past. Now I'm kind of walking in recovery, I guess you could say, because my medicines and everything is kind of evened out.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in the past, I had a lot of more ups and downs,
right.
more up, way up. I had a lot more manic episodes than I did.
Really?
Than I did depressive episodes for my type of bipolar. So our book, the reason that we wrote our book and the reason that we fit that mold is because I have mental health issues, and I wanted to give people with mental health issues something that they could identify with and something that they could understand and find hope in Christ in the midst of their struggles like I had. And I hope that the book kind of outlines all the struggles I went through in the past.
Okay.
And then in the end, it tells you that's where I am now. So that gives them hope that there's recovery possible too. So,
wow.
And then Karen will tell you about, she's my advocate. So we fit that mold.
I love that.
As an advocate, oftentimes that's a family member.
Okay.
But in our case, I have been her friend for over 25 years. I've stuck it out through the hard times. Her family was off and on in support of her, but more off. She comes from a very small family, and her extended family is not close by. So they had not been very supportive in a lot of ways. Her mom had some health conditions and was unable to be supportive as she would have liked to have been. So I kind of stepped in and took a role as a second mom, if you will, in addition to a friend. So I was able to help out in ways that probably most friends would not have done.
What strength did you pull from to do that?
Oh, absolutely. The only strength that I can accept that gives me that strength is God. Without His intervention and His strength and support and power, so many times I would have given up. There's no doubt about it. This is not a path that somebody would choose to follow because it can be so hard. But if you're not a family member, that is. But knowing that God would be there with me on, by my side, walking through this, it I could lean upon him as that tower of strength.
Sharon, could you tell that it might be a struggle for Karen to be your advocate, and could you sense that? Could you?
Oh, we had our share of not getting along times, because the thing about
All right, the real story.
the thing about bipolar is sometimes you turn on the person that's closest to you when you're in those manic episodes, and you blame them, and you it's kind of paranoia. It's a sense, it's kind of a paranoia thing where you think that and she's the one I turned on. And so then when I got better, when I got medicated or whatever it was that made me better, I realized what I'd done, and I always felt bad, but I knew that I'd put her through the ringer. And so I apologized a lot.
Yes, I can remember those times very vividly. And what got me through that was that I would lean upon the verse that I would choose not to be offended. Because I knew it was not her personality coming through. It was the bipolar coming through. And that oftentimes she wouldn't even remember some of the things that she said. So I would not dwell on it, knowing that, and knowing that, I could choose not to be offended. But yeah, they were hurtful words.
And would that be the hardest part of when you were saying it's hard to be the advocate, to be the friend, to be the one in the middle of all this? Is that
not really, not for me anyway. Yeah, and that was just one facet of it, which was difficult. But more than anything else, it can become all-consuming. It will infiltrate your life, literally. During those times of difficulty, that it will impact your relationships, your job, everything that you are involved in is impacted in some way because of your love for someone that seemingly at the time may not even show love towards you. So it definitely had to be a choice. In fact, I can recall a time, so many times, when I wanted to give up, that I felt the Lord calling me to make a covenant with Him to not abandon her. And it was just our covenant, because she had been abandoned so many times in the past, from friends, from family members, even church members even. That I just didn't want that to be me. And I said, I will not do that.
So someone listening is probably right in the middle of this right now. What are some words right now you would say? ABC, start here, and obviously prayer, and depending on the Lord, we all agree on that. But even beyond that, are there some tips that you could say, hey, if you're in the middle of this right now?
My golden egg of the goose is support system.
Okay.
Not just Karen. I have two ladies, Miss Betsy and Miss Jenny. They're my mentors. They're still my mentors. I still talk to them when I'm stressed out. They're wonderful. They're church ladies. They're great. I have some friends. I talk to them. I go and socialize with them. They're part of my support system. One of the things that I would say was key in staying healthy is to have a good support system.
That makes sense.
I would actually echo that to say the support system needs support too.
Okay, that makes sense. Because so say Karen was your only support, you're likely going to burn out or be exhausted or just have, those moments, like you said, of how do I get through this? But to have the extra support gives you the extra, y'all can depend on each other, I guess.
It helps. I would find most of my support, I will admit, came through meditation, quiet times, dedicated prayer, to hear from God, to help me through whatever these situations were, because this was all new for me. I was not familiar with what bipolar entailed.
Mhm.
So I would draw support mostly from that, but then I had a few friends that I felt like I could talk openly with. Um, I I kind of sheltered the people closest to me
Mhm.
because I did not want to see the pain that was going through
Mhm.
these episodes and how it was impacting me. So they would be friends that would not be close contacts.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. Well, jump to the church for a minute. You know, as church families, we are built around the concept of caring for each other and caring for our communities, and of course, looking to reach those who don't know Jesus yet. But um, I can imagine that this could be a difficult situation. So, what could we do in the church setting to care for our congregants and those within our family that are struggling? And if there's a family that maybe has pulled away because they don't really know how to communicate or navigate all of this, what are some thoughts there? So I'm sure experiences you've had, and then maybe some ways you would just speak
Well,
to the church.
I even had the privilege of one time when I was going into the hospital, into the psychiatric ward. Um, Before I went in the psychiatric ward, I had taken the wrong medication and just tossed
Oh, okay.
my place where I live.
Oh, wow.
I had just destroyed it. I had thrown things everywhere and moved things everywhere. So when I got out of the hospital, I was going to come home to that. Well, my church sent people over to my house to clean my house and organize it. And they
Wow.
organized the whole house, the whole condo, and
Oh,
cleaned it and fixed everything for me. And my church did that.
that's so kind.
And
Yes.
so I think it's on an individualized basis because everybody, there's not a blueprint to everybody who has mental health issues. They all experience the mental health issues in different ways.
That makes it more complicated.
So you
Wow.
really
Yeah.
need to get to know the person and the family and what they're going through, because you may have legal issues. You may have, they may have gotten arrested.
Okay.
And sometimes, unfortunately, a lot of people with mental health issues, they get wrongly arrested and put in jail, and they have court issues and all this kind of thing.
Is that for some of the outbursts and things like that? Is that what happens? They can't
Yes,
communicate as
yes,
clearly. And
yes, and
okay.
they don't understand, and they seem violent, and they,
Right.
and I'm not saying that every time or anything, but I'm just saying there's all kinds of issues. And so you never know what the individual needs are of the family that has the person. But I know one thing: when the person is in the hospital, it's very draining on the family. So meals are, because the thing about it is a lot of times for physical issues, people will bring meals for somebody who has physical issues, but you don't see many people bring meals for mental issues.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
And
Yeah.
it may drain the family just as bad or worse for a person to be in the mental hospital, because they have to see them at certain hours. They may be in there for a long time, and that drains the family. I mean, so
That's good.
that's what I think.
Education is key, really, with people don't understand mental illness. They don't understand what family members go through aside from the individual themselves. So it's really good as a church family to be introduced to mental health and mental illness issues. What can they do? What are some practical things that the church can do? And that is, hey, hold a class. Talk about this. Let's don't sweep it under the rug. Let's offer counseling, perhaps, to those that want to learn more about it.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I know that sometimes there's counseling needs, and the fees are sometimes the issue. And so that what just popped in my head was maybe churches could offer some scholarships for some counseling sessions, even maybe at that point.
And churches could get involved with some of the organizations in the area to familiarize themselves with what the needs are with some of these mental health facilities. I just learned the other day about one I didn't even know existed. And they're looking for volunteers, but we don't want people to be afraid to volunteer. There's no need in that.
There probably is a fear, though, that's associated. And I know you both have mentioned the stigma that's out there. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, even, I hate to say churches, but even churches and large organizations as a whole, if they hear that you have a mental health issue, they sometimes have reservations in concerning you.
Right.
And sometimes they may have, I've been in situations in the church setting where they had special rules for me and in a small group, which that didn't set well with me. And so,
can you say more about what that means?
Well, when I was having problems with mania, or even then, I was also diagnosed with ADHD at the time. Now that's kind of fallen by the wayside, but I was talking a lot, and so they had certain rules about how I could interact with people in small groups, which I understand where they're coming from. I just don't know if they came from the right place to address it in the way that they should have, because it ended up offending me instead of getting me in the right direction.
She would actually have to be approved to attend some of the small groups. Right.
Okay.
Because some of the leaders could handle me and some of the leaders couldn't handle me.
They had figured that out, right?
Yeah, unfortunately. I don't have that issue anymore, but but that's one of the things. And then just that's one of the stigmas that I just had problems with.
Yeah. Okay, so you decided to pull together and put this all down in a book form. Why a devotional versus just educational, or is it educational within the devotional?
It actually is educational within the devotions. We felt like the devotions would be, we could pull verses that people were not familiar with, pull out scenarios in the Bible that people may not have been aware of. Because again, our ultimate message was the hope of Christ. We, even during all of our difficult times and throughout our friendship at large, we always leaned upon the third person in our relationship, which was Christ. And we wanted to show the mental health community that that is an answer. There is hope there, that He does understand. He will go through this with you. He will always be your friend. You will never be left alone. And that was the message we wanted to portray. And we used Sharon's story and my responses to get that message out. We did not pull any punches. We are very transparent in our devotions. Sometimes we lean more heavily towards the Bible story, but we always pulled in some kind of biblical concept, whether it was depression from Jonah or anxiety from Gideon, okay?
Right.
So we use various stories to illustrate that point. But what we found has been that people enjoy the stories so much so with Sharon and I that they are reading it more as a book and not a devotional book as we intended. So they're sitting
down and reading it one night?
Yeah. You can't put it down.
It's supposed to be 60 days.
They keep reading it.
Because it's not your typical devotional book. Well, I mean, we admit that, because we incorporate our own personal scenarios, as well as a biblical concept to it. It gives it a unique flair.
Okay. Okay. Well, and then there's a coloring book, but I think also coloring pages, right? Okay, talk to me about the coloring. What's there? What you're thinking?
So when we first approached the publisher,
Mm-hmm.
we suggested that we could use some photography that I had of just some serene, tranquil looking scenes of nature and that kind of thing. She did not like that idea.
Okay, all right.
And so Sharon spontaneously had this brainstorm. What about coloring pages? Well, I mean, her eyes lit up and she said yes. And so we went with it and
right.
we developed some of these coloring pages, incorporating them into the devotional book as a means of inducing peace, a time of reflection. We also incorporated just some questions for the reader to be able to share their own feelings, a page that you could journal those feelings. We threw in some quotes from secular sources, as well as some additional Bible verses that were relevant to the topic. So the devotional book has a devotion from Sharon, from her viewpoint, and then I follow immediately with a devotion from my viewpoint as an advocate about the same topic.
Okay.
And then we have the reflective questions, the quote, the Bible verse, and a coloring page. I think that's it, right?
And coloring pages at the end.
Right. So the coloring book stems from the pages in the devotional book. We just enlarged them and added more.
And put Bible verses.
And put scripture with each image.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So what's been the response to the coloring pages and the coloring book? What have you heard?
So far we've got small sales with the coloring book. It's just we've just now got. I mean, literally just now gotten the coloring book out in print.
So this one's
it's on Amazon,
new, right?
but it's new.
Well, what kind of feedback in general? I know you said people are reading it more quickly, but any other feedback as far as its helpfulness, educational pieces?
We've gotten some great 5-star reviews on Amazon. We've gotten some reviews from people who have mental health issues, people who have family members with mental health issues, people that are working with people with mental health issues. We've got counselors that have bought the book, psychiatrists that have bought the book.
We love when people come back and say, "Oh, I understand what you're saying. I relate to that. That's how I felt." And that's what we wanted to do, to connect with individuals as advocates and those with, the mental illness itself, to be able to connect with our story. Because if they can connect with Sharon or with me, then they're going to see Christ through us, through our story.
We have one person that came to us and said, "I feel like I know y'all. I know y'all. I know you." And they didn't only say that, they said, "I love you."
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
I said, well, okay.
Any regrets putting it all out there?
No.
None?
We have not had any negative. Nobody has been negative. The only thing that we have even had any opposition about at all is just that we say that it's about Christ. And anybody who's not all about Christ, they might have had a little negative from them. But other than that, and we've had positive feedback from people in the secular world that's just going through mental illness too. It doesn't have to be somebody who's Christian.
Yeah, I've had friends, family members, even they didn't know all the story. So they have learned things through our book. And you know what? That's okay, because they didn't know the story because I didn't tell it at that time when I was going through that. But we, like I said, love to have people come back and say, I understand. And they're more open to talk about what their story is.
I can see that. I can see, that someone's put theirs out there, and then that builds courage the opposite way. So I'm sitting here trying to think, who should buy this book? Who should read this book? And it almost sounds like everyone. I mean, I'm not able to put it into.
That's true. I mean, you're really right, because yes, it is geared to the mental health community, and it was meant to be that way. But, if we were true to ourselves, we would realize we too have times of anxiety.
Right.
We too have times of depression, and that we need that uplifting that the Lord will bring into those dark times. So yes, we hope that this book would be helpful in doing that as well. So even though you may not have a mental illness, I mean, it may be that perhaps you need to become an advocate for someone who does, or you yourself find that you relate to some of these stories because of your moments of dark times. I'll just say it that way. So yes, it is relevant to everyone in some way.
Okay, and we can find the book on Amazon. Is that the best place? So on Amazon. All right, and we'll have some more information in the show notes. Karen and Sharon, thank you both.
Absolutely. Thank you. Our pleasure. We just appreciate you letting us share with you.